Good tips.
Hello.
This is what the visuals are all about.
Hello and welcome to Apropos. This is the show about closure where we talk about plants and closure.
Good tips.
Um,
This
you
is what
can
the visuals are all about.
find us on YouTube, and you can also see us live on YouTube and ask questions in the chat. So if you missed this one, if it's already recorded, hit subscribe and that little bell to be notified when we're going live. And you can catch us next time. Okay, so on our panel, we have a full panel today. We have Mia, Ray,
Hello.
I'm Eric, and known only by his surname, Fogus.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think you're our first mononymic guest, like Beyonce.
It's
Yeah.
the Prince of Clojure.
With none of the talent.
I hear you have your own emoticon.
Yeah, at Newbank I have my own. Yeah, there's I don't know that it gets a lot of use. I think that the rich emoticon gets way more use than mine, but it pops up every once in a while.
But didn't you used to sign off emails with like a colon F?
Oh yeah, I do that still sometime.
Okay. All right.
I don't know exactly what that represents, what kind of facial expression that represents. Maybe like
No.
Oh, I
I
thought
don't
you
know.
were I thought you were a self-evaluating function, you know?
It kind of looks like you got a toothbrush in your mouth. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
evaluating this. Yeah,
Or
yeah.
like
Well,
some
I
kind
do brush my teeth, so it is fairly accurate.
of. All right. Vogus, thanks for coming on the show. We have a question to start off. What is your editor setup?
Yeah, so my editor setup couldn't possibly be more boring than it is. Uh, I use Emacs. That's probably as exciting as it gets, and I typically go stock Emacs. So whatever the key bindings are when you
Mhm.
install Emacs, that's what my key bindings are. And for a long time, I was using inferior Lisp mode to do development. But at some point, I changed laptops, and I needed to do some coding immediately. So I installed Cider via the package install, and I've been using Cider, but I don't. Unfortunately, I don't use Cider for any of its like whiz bang features. I
Hmm.
just use it as an evaluator, and so uh, uh, that's
Just to
it.
like
I mean,
start a REPL and
just to start a REPL, and so my Emacs is evaluate Clojure code, and then do org mode. So org mode is really why I
org mode.
use
Mhm.
Emacs. Yeah, I
Interesting.
wrote 2 books now with org mode, entirely in org mode.
Oh wow, which two?
Well, not Joy of Clojure. That was done in sort of a janky markdown format that Chowser and I created, and
Cool.
we wrote this whole like parsing pipeline, and it converts it to docbook, and it was just a huge mess. But functional JavaScript was written entirely in org mode, and,
Hmm.
and it outputs in docbook mode, and then uh, and every single installment of read eval print love has been done with org mode.
Got it. Okay. We'll talk about read eval print love in a little bit. But I'm actually interested in your editor setup a little bit more. So you say you use stock key bindings, but you kind of did it like almost apologetically, like it's boring. Um, I've had this experience with a coworker where, I use Emacs. I've used Emacs a long time, and they were using Emacs, and they were typing, and I was like, let me try something. And I put my hands on the keyboard and nothing I knew worked. Like it was just like the stuff was flying around the screen. Like, wait, I'm just typing. What's going on? And uh that's when I realized, I knew, don't change your key bindings. Like, why go through that? And uh, so I also have stock, and I'm not apologetic about it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
need to do.
I agree. I tend to just want to get started right away, and you know, I could put all my configuration into GitHub or whatever, but I just want to. If I get on a new computer, I want to type Emacs and then just start going right
Yeah.
away.
And it's a lot easier to pair on. It's really kind of a pain in the butt when you're trying to pair with someone, and this is back in the days of people having offices, and you're trying to work on one computer and it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We used to pair all the time at Relevance pre-Cognitect days, and we would pair on these EC2 instances out in the cloud, and it was always a big hassle to have, you know, connect to someone else's Emacs configuration and try to get something done. I mean, it was prohibitively a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any packages for like swapping out, like, hey, I'm typing, open my config. But yeah, because like it's not made for that. It's like this big mutable space of variables and stuff, and
What?
you can't just like undo the config and then start. Yeah,
But no,
what do
I
maybe
thought that was the whole point about Emacs.
yeah, is that you can do anything with it. Presumably you could have like a pair mode where you could load a couple configs and then like, MX apply config, uh,
Mm-hmm.
config A, config B. That's maybe that exists. Maybe that should exist. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe.
I don't.
Shout out from the viewers, you know.
Maybe it exists. Yeah, it's certainly possible. I just feel like it's a whole project to get that working in itself. It's not just like, eval a file and you got a different config.
Funny thing for me is I don't pair like that anyway though. I don't like this concept of like taking over keyboards. I think it's better to backseat pair and then have someone else backseat pair. Because I find it quite challenging to be like every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes swapping over. I don't know whether you still, does anyone still do that? I mean, I don't know.
I feel like we've kind of standardized on like a driver and someone typing. I just lost the word. But
Navigator kind of thing.
yes, whatever.
Oh.
Yes. But there used to be there used to be a lot of different ways, and you used to have to physically get on someone's computer. And then if it was someone with the kinesis that they had remapped, it was basically bootstrapped. Like,
They've got a Dvorak, and then someone's got a Colmac. Oh my God. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Fogus.
Let's
Do you do a lot of
focus.
pairing these days?
No, none. We don't do any pairing on the core team, and I haven't done any in a long time. We do a lot of co-thinking though, which is
Co-thinking.
Right,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Is
We
that where you
do.
like have some kind of telepathic sync up?
Yeah, so I
Co-thinking?
start a sentence.
What's the
and
key bindings
Alex
like for that
finishes
though?
Emacs of the minds.
Wait.
Sorry,
So
go on,
so can you
sorry.
describe it with, I'm sorry to derail with the joke.
No, it's good. On the core team we do. I would say we do, compared to thinking, we do far more thinking than we do coding. Coding is sort of the last thing that we do,
Mm-hmm.
and this is probably not any different than a lot of people. But this is this is probably another reason why I don't really put a lot of time into my dev environment, because I do spend so little time in it that it's not really of importance anymore. There was a time that I did all of that stuff, but those days have passed. But yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time in I would say, a Socratic method, sort of coming to find filtering out problems from a set of input symptoms, right? So I think a lot of times, and this is no different in any other software project, and especially not language projects. I think that a lot of the bug reports that we get are just sort of symptoms, that they're at the symptom level. I'm seeing this is happening. When I do this happens, and we try to take those kinds of reports and filter them down into what's really the problem, and that's a real process, like a real collaborative thinking process that we do on the Clojure core team.
Do you do this live, or is it mostly because you're all in different time zones, or so is it?
No, we're not. Alex and Jared, they're in St. Louis, so there is a time difference there. But myself and Rich, we're both on the East Coast, so that's not much of a problem. So yeah, we do it live. We tend to. There was a lot more early on. And we were sort of defining what the process is for a couple of years. We spent a lot of time sort of coming to what the best process for
So were you
deriving
experimenting?
problems. No,
Or
I
was
wouldn't
it
say
just
that.
discussion about the process?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say experimenting. Although experimentation is part of the process, that's not at that meta level that you're talking about. I would say that we were just sort of getting down onto paper, so to speak. The best way of taking symptoms and filtering them into problems. And Rich kind of went over this in his talk, and Alex had a similar follow-up talk at the last ClojureCon about this kind of stuff. Symptoms down into real problems, like what the real problem is that people are encountering, and then from that branching out into maybe trying to measure and doing a little bit of experimentation and coming to alternatives for solving the real problems. And that's really the key. The alternatives is really where the power comes from. Well, the power comes from elucidating clear problem statements, and then from that we can derive alternatives, and then eventually we land on something that is the solution to the problem that we're seeing. And we do this a lot. I mean, this is really a lot of what we're doing, weighing alternatives and doing a lot of experimentation.
You're doing it live, like on a video call?
Yeah, often, yeah. We'll often be on video calls. So, although we've gotten to the point now where we have established what the process looks like. So we can often go off on our own and put together. We work a lot in spreadsheets. So Google Sheets is where we do a lot of work, and so we can put together these design plans and implementation plans and send them out and work asynchronously on those. But when we really get into a hard problem, we will often sit down and kind of churn through, really burn the midnight oil, so to speak.
How do you classify like hard versus, how do you classify a hard problem, since you mentioned that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where you'll know it when you see it. It's hard to. It's just sort of a sense that X number of years of experience have kind of helped us to get a real an instinct for. I think that I've been in the industry 20 plus years, Alex, a little more than that, and Rich more than that. And so, it's just sort of there's our level of experience and our different diverse level experience has really helped us to get a real sense for what really is going to be a hard problem, and working to come to simple solutions to those hard problems, and that's really what we're striving for.
How do you prioritize, which of these problems to solve? Is there like a set of priorities that change over time, or do you just kind of do it ad hoc?
No, it's not. I wouldn't say ad hoc. We don't ever want to break anyone. So things that are breaking people, they tend to rise to the top of the list.
So if there's a bug that is, well, there's two types of bugs. One is a bug where it's like that is broken for some corner case that we haven't experienced yet. And so you probably want to fix that. But then there's also like someone is saying this is a bug, but it's actually like that's people are relying on that behavior, so we're not going to change it. Is there a lot of that going on? Like kind of triaging, like this is a bug, this is not really a bug.
Yeah, there is a lot of triaging going on, and we have a whole workflow worked out in Jira around that sort of pipeline system. But I would say Clojure programmers on the whole are a lot more disciplined about using implementation details to get their work done, and it certainly happens. And when we go to come to a solution, we try our very best to make sure that even still we're not breaking people that are relying on implementation details. But when it comes down to if there is only one solution, we will break people that rely on implementation details. But that's the only time we'll break people is when that happens. We try never ever to break anyone on our public APIs.
I hear that you have a test suite where you've downloaded a bunch of popular GitHub projects and you will test them with like new versions of Clojure to see if you've broken or how much you've broken.
Yeah, so Jared Taylor, he put together a regression suite of hundreds of Clojure projects that we'll run against. But even still, we'll run. You will never get all of those corner cases, and that happens. We realize that it's a good thing that we're running this, and we've discovered a lot of things that would have been problems if we had released it without those tests. But it still there are cases where if it doesn't appear in that code, it's not tested.
Right.
Even in the hundreds of Clojure projects.
Right.
Do you feel like the priorities for the language have changed as it's like once it became a part of Nubank? Do you feel like things you started prioritizing things differently?
I would say no. I don't feel that at all. I think that Nubank has been extremely gracious in allowing us in funding us, giving us a job to keep Clojure going, and I have not felt any pressure from internal from Nubank to push any given feature or any other feature at all. So we still. Now, being inside of Nubank, we have this incredible resource. I mean, we have millions of lines of Clojure code in Nubank, and so I think that we're able to, we're able to leverage that code internal to Nubank to test things out before we go live with them. But I think even still, we could get even better with that. But never ever has Nubank come to us and pressured us to do any feature or fix any bug over any other. Now that said, we don't want to punch ourselves in the face either. So whenever we create new features or fix bugs, we always try to make sure that we're not breaking anything inside of Nubank first. That's sort of our first
Yeah.
layer.
That makes sense. I mean, it's millions of lines of code too, so it's probably good coverage.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
and it's it being a big code base, we can't just willy-nilly say, here's a master snapshot version of Clojure. Can you just run production code on this? So that can't happen. But there are staging environments that I think we have leveraged and we can better leverage. And so we're hoping that we can establish a stronger tie between ourselves and those internal Nubank staging systems moving forward.
Yeah, I was thinking almost more in terms of like practical considerations, because you've got the world's largest supply of junior Clojure developers. Historically it was an expert's language, but I imagine that Nubank has, new people coming in all the time with different concerns.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that we would like to push a lot more on the training aspect for Clojure, and we've pursued multiple angles along that to try to better enhance our own internal Clojure training materials. And there's a lot more that we can do in that regard. And we have some initiatives to sort of push on that a lot harder this coming year. And so there are things in Clojure that's inherent to the language. I think that a lot of people, especially people new from other languages coming to Clojure, that are
Not what they
they're
expect.
just they're not what they expect. And so one thing that really is a game changer is the REPL-driven development and interactive programming. And so people coming from Python or Ruby or whatever, they have this notion of interactive programming, but it's not the same as it is in Clojure. And so I think that really, if we wanted to do this right, we would really foster that idea really early on in people coming to the language. And I don't think we're really doing that yet. And that's a huge, I don't know, that's just a game changer, and we have to push on that a little more.
Yeah, it is
Quite
a hard
surprising
thing.
that was quite surprising that Clojure itself as a website doesn't have a REPL. I mean, there are plenty of other languages that have REPLs that aren't Clojure, like Python and even Ruby, I think, and Go, I think, has a friggin' REPL. So it's
like right on the website.
Well, either a link to a REPL, or there, because obviously JavaScript, a ClojureScript exists. There are plenty of REPLs for ClojureScript. It's not perfectly Clojure, but as a first experience,
you a
it seems
flavor,
like
yeah.
it's a kind of like a pretty obvious thing to do.
So let me push on that a little bit, Ray. Do
Go
you mean like
go.
an example of a REPL, like right in the browser that people can type
Yes.
expressions into? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So I think, yeah, I do appreciate that, and I think that there is something to saying, what is your language? Why should I use your language? And maybe I can type some stuff into this thing. But if I'm writing Clojure code, I don't ever type into the REPL. I never type code into the REPL ever. And so that's not really the experience that I'm having with Clojure. And so I think that if we wanted to show REPL directly on the website, that's a bit of a smoke and mirrors in the way that you would actually do programming.
I mean, that's actually a really good point. I mean, what I'm presuming you're saying is that you're typing code into your file, into some .clj file, and then hitting some Emacs keystroke and either compiling the whole file or one defen or maybe you're in a rich comment block and you're like hitting a single expression. And so you are running stuff at the REPL, but it's not typing into the prompt at the REPL.
That's right. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah. Maybe it's maybe it's a distinction without a difference. But from when I'm actually writing code, that's all the difference.
No, I agree, and I wonder if that's not the experience that needs to go on the website, right?
Yeah,
Some kind of like, a code editor, code mirror with like you as you type, or as you hit a keystroke and it like changes some, I don't know, graphic or some visualization on the right hand side.
And then it would start with pre-written Clojure code that
right.
people
You'd start with something done. Yeah.
Look at, and they would say, "Oh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen."
Yeah, I would love to see it in action, and I think that trying to replicate the real programming experience would be important.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you're right, but I also think that that there can be more than one right answer, and just having a REPL that you can just put in +1, 2, 3 is kind of nice, just to prove that it works. Sometimes people just want to sip and not drink the whole thing, But anyway, I mean, I take your point. That's probably most people's, and it's definitely my daily rider is like that, evaluating an editor. But it's just, if we're going to highlight REPLs, it just seems like a bit of maybe a PR exercise would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like what makes the REPL different than say something like a Python shell and the difference is that I think that no one creates their app inside of the Python shell.
Right.
They
barely even load their own code into it.
Right. Yeah. It's different. It's a different relationship. Yeah. And in Clojure, the whole app happens live. It happens. I build it. I put the seed in and it grows and I trim it and that's the app. And then I guess the code, right? The text is the side effect of that process that replicates that whole creation process. But yeah, I think that I would love to see if we could go to the Clojure website and have something like a REPL or a dev environment or something that really shows like what that process is, that interactive process being connected to your live application is really like, because typing +1, 2, 3 doesn't show that.
Definitely not. No.
Not kidding. I think that people would be excited if they saw what it looked like.
Yeah. I think it's very foreign to a lot of people, especially programmers who are used to, their code being basically dead until they run the test at the command line or something. And, it basically starts from scratch and loads the whole thing from zero, whereas we're not doing that. We're loading it a little bit at a time as we type it, and it's kind of building it up, and we're replacing parts as we change the function's definition, and but it's always running, like it's never dead. And I think that process is just it needs to be experienced. It needs to be, I mean, you could watch someone do it, and then you also have to do it yourself to experience it. And I find that like it's very telling. Well, it's very common. Let me start over. It's very common in like the Clojurian Slack or before on IRC, where someone would say, "What happens if I pass nil to, merge?" It's like, well, like, why are you asking a person?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
but I can find out.
You don't have to know. The REPL knows. Just do it. Just type in the code. Why don't you have a REPL open? Like you're typing in Slack. Just have a REPL open and type it. And it's just not a habit that people have. Like, especially a beginner, they are not thinking that way. They're like, I want to read the docs, and then the docs don't answer my question. Okay, well, how do I figure it out? I guess I'll have to talk to a person. But because if you're like working in Java, like imagine, well, what happens if I pass a null to this method? Oh, you got to set up like a new class with a main and like write like 4 lines of code
Or
and
you start your Clojure REPL and then you
you
try it
do
out that
it in
way.
Clojure. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Forget, people, beginners forget all the time which order things go in, right?
Hmm.
So the easiest thing to do is to put -3 5 in a REPL and see what comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easier than reading the docs.
Yeah.
Definitely greater
Oh,
than 3.5. I always get that wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the
Greater than,
greater
less
than,
than.
less
This is,
than.
oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
that reminds me. I do use one other feature from Cider. If I type an open parent and then a function name, it like tells me what the expected
Oh yeah.
arguments are.
That's
So
nice.
Yeah.
that's kind of nice.
That's nice. And it's
I didn't get
probably
that with inferior Lisp mode.
it's getting that from the REPL, which is the
Hmm.
cool part, right? It's not like static analysis or anything. It's all there in
Right.
the REPL.
The data, the REPL is the database.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've been talking about your editor setup and your workflow and core, but we've got a bunch of questions in the chat. So I'm gonna bring
Okay.
those up before we
Hit me.
move on. So there's one question about what is your setup for org mode? Is it for productivity? Are you keeping to-do lists and stuff?
I do some to-do list. I most of my to-do lists have migrated into spreadsheets, so I've
Hmm.
kind of moved off of org mode for that. No, I would say org mode. My org mode setup, believe it or not, is stock org mode setup, uh, and uh, I I write blog posts. I write my own journal stuff. I write books. I write fiction, whatever, right? And so it's a writing tool for me. It's a thinking tool for me. And
Why
when
org
I can't,
mode? What do you like about it for writing?
that that's a really good question. I just like I like that the well at one time, pre-Pandoc days, I guess you could write in org mode and then sort of export to other formats, and so I did
Mhm.
like that. So uh, but now that Pandoc exists, I mean that's definitely the better tool for that. But now I guess it's just I did do to-do lists, and grocery lists in org mode at one time, and so there were nice key bindings for moving stuff up and down the hierarchy and closing things out.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I also like the code blocks and in inline syntax highlighting and stuff like that is
Right.
which is kind of nice.
Cool. Cool. Um, wow, LC. I don't know who that is, but they have a lot of questions. Um, so what are your thoughts on the future of programming languages, both in general and Lisp and Clojure in particular?
The future of programming languages. Uh, I think that the future of programming languages is going to look a lot like Python.
Uh,
Python seems to be infiltrating every single uh, field, and why that is, I couldn't say right off the top of my head what the reason for that is, but they've definitely penetrated a lot of different a broad range of fields. So a lot of people now, young people, people pivoting off of other languages are getting into Python, and so there's going to be a lot of people who are pushing for that and stuff that looks like that or stuff that works like that. So it's not a great answer, but I think that Python is sort of got a stranglehold on the computing industry right now. Um, I don't know. I don't know that how that works with stuff like LLMs, but you know, if there's more Python code, then LLMs can certainly generate Python code a lot better than they can stuff like what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Isn't it that in waves though, Fogus? Because you have like Scheme and then Python, Scheme and then Java and now Python. I mean, is that where it ends? Feels like a bad end. It feels like an unhappy ending
Well,
to me. You know, if that's the story.
yeah.
Let's have a bit of fiction.
Well, I would love to know, Ray, when Scheme was at the top of that
That's
list.
what I was about to say. It's maybe more C and then Java, C and C++ and Java.
Well, I was thinking of a teaching language then. Okay. I mean, typically MIT picks like a teaching language because it's probably quite popular, you know, and a lot of universities do that. So
you're right.
You know.
Yeah. From the education angle, for sure. Yes, Scheme was big, and I think that you're right. It is cyclical. This just feels different. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it. This Python stranglehold.
The data scientification of programming, right? It's like, you know, you mentioned LLMs. I think that's a really big part of it. There's a push to incorporate LLMs and, you know, their various iterations into everything that we do, and they work best with Python.
Yeah, if this LLL thing actually does sort of become how we write code, then the important thing is going to be what can come out of LLMs, right? What can it generate that actually runs, and at the moment maybe that's Python, but I don't know. I've had a real hard time getting LLMs to do anything useful for me, but I've tried. I put a lot of effort into it, and at Nubank they're really pushing on this a lot, and I think that part of the reason that I've been really dissatisfied with LLMs is because like coding is not the hard part. That's the end of the process.
Have you ever tried to ask it to help you with the process?
Yeah, at one time, Christian Romney was looking into that, and he had this whole like gigantic prompt about what the Socratic method is, and you know what alternatives and problem statement, what a good problem statement looks like, and it was actually pretty cool watching it, you know, put out some recommendations, but I never felt like it stopped us from having to think, I guess.
Right.
I mean, if you're stopped from having to think, then I don't. It's we're being pushed to use it more, and I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll use it to write some SQL queries. Then they also gave us free Coursera, and I thought, or I could just like take a couple advanced SQL classes and write the SQL queries myself, and then I don't have to. That ended up being faster than trying to. And now I feel better about SQL.
I tell you what, it's kind of interesting based on our first part of our talk. One thing that I'm using LLMs for is configuring Emacs, because I find it like a confusing mess of stuff. And I ask it like, hey, how do I set this up? And it's mixed. But often if it's a simple thing, then it works. If it's a more complicated thing, like, oh, you have to install this package and then get it to work with this other package, like it doesn't work well.
Right.
So
for me, I think it's like if it's low stakes where you can try something and it's proven to be right fairly quickly, that's okay. But as soon as it becomes like high stakes, and even like 3 lines of Clojure is fairly high stakes, and you know,
yeah,
for me anyway, and it gets it wrong so often that it ends up just being a pain in the neck. And I feel like that's the way it is, you know, is that it's just too often like you have to know that it's right or be able to prove that it's right to make it useful, and then you kind of have to know the answer. Otherwise,
exactly right.
And it's then it's like, what is the point of it, you know? And then you end up in this like vibe world where Actually, you just end up
So
saying, okay, I'm just going to like forget any of my critical faculties. I'm just going to trust the machine. Well, but that really
just
is the
press continue,
Why
continue,
would I
continue.
start? Why would I
but
start trusting
that's
people?
what but that's yeah, but that's where we're going though. I mean, it's
It
crazy to me,
is.
but that feels like a real direction for some people.
I only use it for stuff that I would copy and paste anyway. Like, how do you do a for loop over the files in a directory in Bash? Like, I never remember how to do that.
Now, Bash is inscrutable, so that actually has been the real win for me is when I need that one-line Bash script or sed, right?
Yeah. Oh
I
God.
do Bash or sed so infrequently that I've forgotten everything about it every time I come to it.
I'm going to
So
give
that
you a nice upgrade to Bash called Babashka, and then you'll never need to go to this shithole again, you know?
40% of Clojure users that responded to that question.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about Python that I see LC also, talked about in the comments is the Jupyter notebooks actually start to give people something close to a REPL experience, I think,
Mm.
where they're, and so I wonder if, it is part of it is that we have LLMs being thrust upon us everywhere, and there's a lot of Python in that way, but also there's this new ease of using Python that is almost converging on a REPL. That I wonder if that has to do with its adoption at all, and also whether that is going to make it easier to bring people in from Python into a REPL workflow now that they're more used to seeing their code as more alive, as being able to evaluate it line by line. Because I work with a data science team where I take their Python and I make it work in Clojure, and it's gotten a lot easier, to kind of map their process to my process because of the Jupyter notebooks.
Well, that sounds a little bit like what I had done with org mode. Is it's certainly not as in the same class as a Jupyter notebook, but what I there are times that I've written blocks of text and code in between, and then annotate the code to this code goes over here in this file, and this other goes over in the test directory, and at the end you tangle it, and then you have like a library with test cases at the end. And that's what I was a little unclear about, what the Jupyter notebook is like. Can I write all of this stuff and at the end have something that someone can pull in and use as an API?
Mm.
That's just my ignorance speaking. I don't know the answer to
Oh no, I don't know either. I don't write them, I just read them.
that.
But it's a more interactive way of writing. And I wonder if that hasn't helped Python proliferate more as kind of an almost REPL-like experience in a popular language.
Have you all used Clerk? Speaking of notebooks.
Yeah.
I have not. I've seen it used and it looks cool, but I haven't used it myself. No.
I've used it for a few things. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to you feel like you're in your editor, and you got your browser on the side, and you write comments and they turn into text in your document, and then you write code and it turns into like a code block. But then you can run it in the browser, and if you if you define a function, it like shows up. But if you evaluate code, if it returns the right thing, it can be visualized directly, like as an image or graph
Right.
or something. And so it's kind of neat because it's got the REPL experience. Like you're definitely doing the REPL, right? You're like running code, evaluating and stuff. But part of the evaluation is that it shows up in a document at the same time.
Yeah, I think having the visual tools built in is pretty powerful as well.
Yeah. Because sometimes like printing out, pretty printing a giant nested map is not fast enough feedback for me. Like having to like look through it, and a picture would be much faster.
Maybe there's like a good world where people who have been using ChatGPT as their rubber duck and have gotten used to talking to something about programming uh, become more desirous of an interactive programming experience that eventually leads them back to the REPL.
Yeah. All right, more questions. What's your take on ClojureScript nowadays, given the recent advances in JavaScript and TypeScript?
So yeah, I think that I couldn't say what the advances are. I don't keep track on a day-to-day basis of what's happening in TypeScript or ClojureScript. I'm sorry, TypeScript or JavaScript. But I think that the level of abstraction that ClojureScript gives me is really where my brain operates at, and that's why I'm using Clojure in the first place. It's just that it just maps correctly to my mind, and so I personally would I've done a lot of JavaScript code and very little TypeScript code, but so I won't speak directly to that, but there's a lot of still, I mean, there's a lot of ceremony in JavaScript that just gets in the way for me.
But you wrote functional JavaScript.
I did, and it had no impact on the industry. I tried my best. I tried, but it didn't work.
Did you write functional Python?
I'm almost certain that would have even less impact.
So my idea is that ClojureScript to me had a really big advantage. So ClojureScript, we got it first. It came out in 2011. This was before TypeScript. This was before, I think the only other real compiled to JavaScript language was CoffeeScript that had any traction. And this was before all the ES6 stuff. So this was classic JavaScript where you type out function every time and you don't have let and const, you just had vars. And to me, ClojureScript was like a huge leap past that.
Yeah.
But and then Core Async came out and it was just like light years ahead because instead of having the callback hell, you were now in control. You didn't invert the control with the callback. You like had control. I'm gonna take from this thing and from this thing, and the blocking happens behind the scenes. You know, you don't have to think about it. But now JavaScript has async await, and it feels like the the quantum leap that ClojureScript had over JavaScript is not so much. So it's like JavaScript is 80% of the way there. And it just feels like is now you have to evaluate, is it worth the like compilation step? You know, the ClojureScript compilation step. Is it worth the cost of you know, being a little bit out of sync with the JavaScript world? And before it was very clear to me. It was like, no, this thing is so much better. But now it's like,
Yeah.
You
Well,
gotta think about it.
I buy all of that. I buy all of that. I think that a lot of languages have become more functional over time because I think that language like Clojure has proved out that it provides benefit. You know, I to that very point that you made is that the catching up point is that I started my journey is in Scala, and so I was doing Scala 2007 2008 because the options were Java or Scala or some other weird languages like Clojure, and it was easier for me to pitch something like Scala to my team at the time, because you could effectively write Java flavored Scala, but
Right.
if you really wanted to leverage, Scala was leaps and ahead of Java at the time. But over time, I think that Java has narrowed that gap tremendously. So if I were to go back in time now and try to pitch Scala with Java 21 or Java 24, I wouldn't be able to sell it, because the gap is so small. And I think that because of other languages adopting things that Clojure did a long time ago, ClojureScript did a long time ago, that is a real, I hesitate to say issue, but it's an issue that gap is closing. So what can we do next, right? Maybe something like Flow is another step forward, right? That helps us to stand out.
What is Flow?
What
do you?
It's the new library that Rich has been working on inside of Clojure core async. I'll let you describe your asynchronous flows
I see. Yeah.
So maybe, right, that's still in progress. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't see anyone else doing that.
One thing on that point about Java sort of having more features was, I really thought it was great. 1.12 was really great work by you guys to actually make all this kind of streaming stuff, all the kind of stuff that was actually quite, where I think, again, when Clojure came out, it was the interop between Clojure and Java was just these little, dot here and do to there. And it was just like, oh, this is actually, like you were saying before, you can actually write your Java better in Clojure and you can test it even better in Clojure. It was like the interop was so simple and so nice. Java's become more complicated and it's got more features. And then it became more annoying to kind of like interop. So I think 1.12 is already good, and I mean, I'd like to see more of that in 1.13. I'm guessing there will be more of that in 1.13.
Well, I wouldn't say for sure. Yeah, but absolutely, that is always something that we're trying to push on. Like, where can we leverage features and new behaviors in the JVM at every release? We're always trying to push that angle every single time.
Yeah, and model threads and stuff like that, the green thread stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, virtual threads are amazing. I love them.
I've been neck deep into virtual threads the past few months. It's fun.
With
I like it a lot myself.
With like
so
stuff?
I've been working on working on core async to provide a way of running your async stuff on top of virtual threads.
That will be nice.
Yeah, you don't need the Go macro anymore.
Well, you do for backward stuff. We don't want to break anyone, but maybe you can run all that Go. You can get rid of a lot of that Go machinery because you don't have to worry about how your threads are being parked on I/O operations. The JVM is doing that for us. So it's another one of those examples that the JVM is catching up to something we were doing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we can leverage that. We can get rid of a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
Can I bring something up, like just a quick thing? I was watching a talk by Brian Getz about the Project Valhalla and some of the recent advances on the JVM and to the Java language. And he talked about data-oriented programming. And I was just like, oh my God, he basically said, yeah, all this OO stuff that we do was kind of in vogue in the 90s, but now we realize like you just kind of want data and you just want to process it. I was like, oh my God. Even that stuff they're picking up. And
I wish someone had thought of that earlier.
I know. So he was talking about all the value objects that you can create, the value classes, where it's immutable and it's instead of using reference identity, it uses value identity. And you can, instead of using pointers, you can just inline the stuff. So you would have this big graph of value objects would just be a contiguous block of memory. Excuse me. And anyway, it's just amazing to see like all this stuff coming full circle. And I wonder how long it'll take Clojure to start taking advantage of that, because it's not known for quick turnarounds on those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's I couldn't say for sure, but yeah, it's definitely always something that we're thinking about.
Yeah, it's not even out yet, so.
Right.
One thing
So-
that we started asking people that we haven't asked you yet is what's your favorite thing about Clojure?
What's my favorite thing about Clojure? So, yeah, we've kind of touched on it, the interactive programming, and I wrote a whole blog post about this. I think it's called "The One About Interactive Programming," and so, yeah, and I mean, just that is just so amazing to me to be able to. It's such a cliche now, but to grow my program inside of a clean slate. Like every time I open a new REPL, it's a clean slate, and my program like grows from that. I just find that it works so well for me. I've been a little bit spoiled because I was exposed to that kind of early on in my programming life, and that was Common Lisp, or actually XLisp Stat was the first Lisp that I used, and that was in college, and it had this amazing interactive programming environment, and so it's just been the thing that if I wasn't using, if Clojure didn't exist, I would be using a Lisp because of that interactive programming. Clojure is the one that captured me, though.
So
Very much captured you.
Yeah.
So you talked about how you don't consider like it important to configure your Emacs to make you a better programmer, to help, like, let's say, program faster, because you're not spending that much time programming. But at the same time, you like the interactive aspect of Clojure. And so this is a thing I struggle with myself, because I also feel like I don't want to be spending all my time configuring Emacs. But at the same time, and I make the argument like my bottleneck is not typing, right? Like it's not like learning 10 more keystrokes is not going to make me more productive because it's not my bottleneck. But for interactive programming, I do think one bottleneck is how fast you can type, right? Like how fast can I get the code into the REPL, run it, and read the answer back? And so I don't know. I wonder, what do you think about that? Because I think there's this other school of thought that like having better keystrokes, better control of your text means that you can be thinking about your code more and not about the typing. Right.
Yeah, so I guess I left a little bit of the story out when talking about this, and so if typing is a typing speed is a measure, then I'm going to fail on that immediately, because there's physically I have some limitations in that, and so I have like this like weird pinky finger that doesn't ever straighten, and I cut off the tip of this finger, so I don't have any feeling in the tip of that finger.
Oh no.
So like I'm working on 3 fingers on my left hand. So
like Django Reinhardt.
I couldn't for like a minute. I thought that you were like doing a hypothetical.
no, this is
Like,
this is
oh,
the stuff there.
Literal Emacs pinky.
No, this is all real. And so I don't type very fast. Like on the left side of the keyboard, I'm working on 3 fingers, so the keyboard is not laid out for me the way that I need it to be. So keystrokes as well don't really work for me. So I've learned the core set of keystrokes, and that's fine. And so maybe there is a way that I could remap it to work with my specific problem, but I haven't I just haven't taken that dive. And because of that, that's just like a more practical thing for me. I liken it to 3D printing, where I like to have something that's 3D printed, but all of the garbage that goes around, like making something actually come out and it looks correct and it's not crooked, and the extruders don't jam up, and all of that stuff, I just don't want to have anything to do with that. So I just find that it's not very interesting. There's no other way to put it. I don't find the configuration side very interesting.
Slackwise, I think, has an emergency, which is the companies and teams they have worked in as of late have been migrating their legacy Java platforms to TypeScript on Node.js. I really wish I could convince them to use ClojureScript instead. Is there any chance ClojureScript could get some love toward being self-hosted and easy to use on Node?
Yeah, I don't know. I think David might have talked about this the last time that you had him on, and I certainly wouldn't want to talk, past David on that. And so I think that from a purely academic perspective, that I would have a person not involved in maintaining ClojureScript at all. That's really cool, like having ClojureScript be self-hosted. But there's a lot of practical matters that go into the decisions behind that I can't speak to at all.
Oh, I don't know any of these.
I think it's fair to say that things like SCI and NBB and all this kind of stuff, they have a lot of that stuff, and like Squint, and especially stuff like the stuff that Borgdude is doing with like what's it called? Yeah, Squint is a good example where it's very close to JavaScript and very close to ClojureScript. So it's kind of like a hybrid language, Those are interesting experiments. But if someone wants a completely, because I think if you were going to use like Squint with Node.js would be quite interesting. But I think it's obviously early days for that experiment,
Yeah, I don't know this. I don't really have a good sense for what the separation between Squint and SCI and Babashka is, and how that all fits together.
I think
I'm
Squint is
ashamed.
something new,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah,
I'm ashamed to admit that I don't know the separation there.
No, it's okay. Well, this is not the time to go into it, but okay.
they're all based on SCI, right? I believe. Maybe not Squint.
Not Squint.
But SCI is just an interpreter. It's just a library. Babashka is all the work to get it to compile to get SCI to compile to the Graal VM, so it's a single binary.
Right.
And then include a bunch of libraries in it and make sure that it still compiles. And then Squint is a totally separate language. It's a compiler from what looks like ClojureScript to a cleaner JavaScript. So instead of having its own implementations of the data structures, it just does a copy on write on an array. It doesn't have a vector type. It's just a copy on write on an array.
I see.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we want you to win.
Okay, wait. You get a choice. Can you define monad or transducer? You choose one.
Aren't transducers just tools for building monads?
Oh no.
No.
I'll try my hand at transducer, because I was doing a lot of stuff with streams in the last Clojure version, and it really made me think a lot about transducers. And so the way I like to think about transducers is that a transducer is a function with behavior X that, given a function of behavior Y, returns a function of behavior XY.
Nice.
That's the best I can describe that.
So it's a way of composing behaviors.
That's how I would say it. Yeah.
Cool.
Independent of the underlying structure that it will eventually, hopefully, work on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's cool.
And you see that a lot with Java Streams. Java Streams works in a similar way.
Right. Except they're not reusable. Right.
Right. Well, right, because it is attached to the stream, and so eventually you're going to terminate the stream, and it's all of that behavior goes away. So yeah, right. So that's where the transducers really, kind of shine, right? That this is a packet of behavior that you can pass around and use in different places.
Yeah, I remember playing with Java Streams and being like, okay, like I built up a stream with a little pipeline, then I saved it to a variable, and then I took that value with that variable and I added a filter on it, at the end. And then I took it again, the same like the original one, and I added a different filter, and it was like, no, you can't use the same one twice. And I was like, oh, I get it. This is like some mutable thing that you're kind of building up for one shot.
But you can do so conditionally. So you can look in you can have conditional code around and then add onto your stream as you go, depending on certain conditions in your program.
Right. But you can't branch. You can't take a thing and then say, okay, do it this way, one way, and one way this way, and no, that's not.
I guess that's right. Yeah.
We have hit and gone over. We're at 6.
You're right.
So.
Well, let's wrap it up. I want to respect everyone's time. Do you have anything you would like to plug, or anything you're excited about?
Yeah. So I would say, on the main branch of core async is a new namespace called Flow. I would love people to go check that out. And we're doing a lot of, Rich has put a lot of thought and effort into this. And Jared Taylor right now is putting together a really cool flow visualization tool. And so I would recommend people go check that out. I mean, it's really something exciting and big coming to core async, independent of the stuff that I'm doing with virtual threads.
Cool. What about read eval print love?
Well, I haven't. So read eval print love is just a little informational newsletter, I guess, that I used to do, and I would take these little tiny programs and sort of deconstruct them for dozens of pages, and I haven't really done anything with that in a few years, but they're still out there and available for people to read for free online. So love is spelled with a lambda, so good luck searching for it. But maybe if you put Fogus read eval print love, it'll come up somewhere.
You know what? This is one last one. This is a good one. I think we should start asking everyone this. I really liked David's answers from last episode. Non-programming related book recommendations.
I actually read a lot of non-programming books. I don't read many programming books anymore. I feel like I've reached the end of the line with programming. Yeah, right. It feels that way. Although I couldn't possibly bring myself to do that. Yeah, so I've been reading a lot of fiction, and so there's a million things. So let me say Baron Corvo. So Baron Corvo was a writer, a decadent writer in the late in the 1890s and into the early 1900s. And mostly what he's known for is being an eccentric person. and there was a book written about him called The Quest for Corvo. It's one of the best biographies I've ever read, and it gives you a real sense of what this character was like. And he lived this extremely eccentric life, even by today's standards, I would say that he would be considered eccentric. But his writing in itself is really good, and I think that his real name is Frederick Rolfe, British writer, but he went at times in his life by the name Baron Corvo, and he wrote a book called Hadrian the Seventh. And Hadrian the Seventh, early in Frederick Rolfe's life, he was trying to become a priest. That didn't work out, and he became bitter by that. And so Hadrian the Seventh is his revenge novel about some unknown priest in the middle of nowhere becoming pope, and what he would do if that was the case. And so, he was an interesting person, and so
it's very to the minute as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe someone like Frederick Rolfe will be named next pope.
Yeah.
Cool. I will link to this Baron Corvo in the description. Last question. Who would you like to see on Apropos?
There's a lot of people. So my good friend Russ Olson, he's always an entertaining person to talk to, and he's doing a lot of interesting stuff right now, inside and outside of Clojure. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see Russ. You guys talk to Russ.
Russ, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sure.
Thanks for being here.
It's been a pleasure. I could go all day.
I hope to see you at the conch.
Yes.
I will be there. Unless something comes up, I will be there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Okay, the stream is finished.